Welcome, everyone, to this Professional Development Hour presentation brought to you proudly by the Atlanta Metro chapter of the Georgia Society of Professional Engineers, an affiliate of the National Society of Professional Engineers. Before we begin, we'd like to let you know that any opinions presented tonight are solely the opinions of the presenter and not that of the Georgia Society of Professional Engineers, the National Society of Professional Engineers, or any other of its affiliates. We certainly hope you will enjoy tonight's presentation, so sit back and relax, and on with the show.
Our presentation this evening is on radon, hazardous radon in homes and schools, testing and mitigation. Our speaker today is Mike Leggett. He is the operations manager of Georgia Radon Defense, a North Georgia company dedicated to providing state-of-the-art radon mitigation solutions. He and the firm are positioned as go-to experts for all things related to radon gas detection mitigation across the region. He holds a BA in chemistry from Clemson, and his credentials include National Radon Proficiency Program, Certified Radon Measurement Professional, Certified Radon Mitigation Specialist, and several other certifications he can tell us more about. So, without further ado, please join me in giving Mike a warm welcome.
All right, well, thank you. I forgot that there was an actual title to this, but I just basically recycled a presentation I had for real estate agents, but I dropped a lot of slides that I didn't think were relevant to you all. But as he said, I'm a mitigation contractor. I live in Athens, Georgia. I got into this business because I was a home inspector. I started doing home inspections in 2013, and pretty much immediately I started getting questions about radon. And in fact, I bought a company and it came with 2 radon monitors. The previous owner, I asked him what they were, and he said, well, you know, sometimes people ask for this, and you know, you just do a 48-hour test, give them the results, that's it. He didn't really know anything about radon. Most home inspectors don't know anything about radon, but I like to know what I'm talking about. I'm not always right. I try not to make things up, but I got certified to do radon testing since that's what I was doing, and I wanted to be able to speak confidently about it when people ask me questions. But quickly in the home inspection business, I started meeting people, and people started calling me that had radon issues that they had not been resolved. People who had family members who had lung cancer, who were told their houses could not be fixed. People who had contractors fix their home and they weren't getting the results they wanted. And people that just weren't taken seriously if their levels were just under 4 picocuries per liter. Maybe they wanted it below 2. People wouldn't give them the time of day. So as a home inspector, I wanted to be able to refer contractors that I trusted, and I didn't really have anybody that I trusted. So I thought I would start a company. My company was originally called Georgia Healthy Homes. The idea was that home inspectors, some of them, should have the skills necessary to solve people's indoor air quality problems, or people who think their home is making them sick. I wanted to start a business that helped those people, and people didn't really want to call a home inspection company, so I started Georgia Healthy Homes, and the idea was that we would help people solve indoor air quality and water quality issues, primarily indoor air. And pretty quickly radon became our only service, but we still get calls from people whose house is making them sick. They don't know why, and they're desperate for solutions. And in fact, I had, and this doesn't happen all the time, but I had someone called for a radon test last week. They said, we're not feeling well in our home. I said, well, you know, radon's not going to make you sick. It'll give you cancer and kill you, but it's not going to give you the sniffles. It's not going to make you have seizures. It's not going to make you sneeze. You know, there's lots of symptoms that people think might be radon because they're desperate for an answer. And so I went to this home actually last Friday, went in, put in a radon monitor, put in an air quality monitor, and I had a particulate counter, and I flipped it over. I asked them what they thought the issue was, and she said she thought it was an issue with their HVAC. That's why I had the particle counter. She thought it was a filtration issue. But when I got over to CO2, it spiked up to 5,000 parts per million. So I went in their crawl space, and they had a furnace venting directly in the crawl space. So we shut the system down. They're getting it replaced. They just had the home inspected 2 months ago. This has been a persistent problem. I don't know how it was missed. But it could have killed them, and they called us because they were desperate for a solution, and they came across radon. But anyway, I have certifications, mitigation, code certified, mostly stuff from when I was a home inspector. I'm a home inspector till the end of this month, and I'm done. I sold my company, and I just want to focus on radon, on mitigation. So. We'll try not to give, I have too many clicks in here, so I'm probably just going to click through the whole slide. I apologize for that. But what is radon? It's an invisible radioactive gas. It seeps into homes through soil gas, seeps into all buildings, seeps into the outdoor air. But it can increase the risk of lung cancer based on exposure to this radioactive gas. So you can't see it, can't smell it. Doesn't do anything but cause lung cancer. You probably don't know you're exposed to it. You know, the only way to find it is to test for it, and it's easy to do. So here's some radon myths. Number one, scientists aren't sure that radon's a real problem. We hear that a lot. I meet real estate agents all the time that say it's a hoax. They tend to downplay things that interfere with their transaction. Radon testing devices are not reliable. I hear this all the time. I have people that test with consumer devices, and they call and they want to have a professional test, but the technology's cheap. Consumer radon devices are very accurate. Maybe not every one that you can find on Amazon, but there's Airthings and EcoSense, and Luft is made by Sun Nuclear. There's lots of great consumer devices that are proven to work. That it only affects some types of homes. We hear that a lot, especially from real estate agents. They might say, well, you have a crawl space, you don't need to test for radon, it's a vented crawl space. Or it's a slab. They think it's just basements, so you hear that a lot, but any home can have elevator radon. Another very common myth that it doesn't affect this part of the country. Like, people might look at the old EPA maps and they see, and I hear this from realtors all the time, they say, well, we didn't think there'd be radon in Madison County. We thought it was just around Stone Mountain. You know, Stone Mountain obviously is a large piece of granite, but that's actually not where the highest radon is in the state of Georgia. So that's common that it's a northern problem or just a Stone Mountain problem. A neighbor's test is a good indication. We hear people say that sometimes, well, my neighbor tested and their house was fine, so I probably don't need to test. And then also, it's difficult to sell a home. I think it should be easier if you know what the system does to sell a home with the radon mitigation system, because it has other benefits. And then, let's see, and then radon causes other health problems, just lung cancer. There are some studies that are suggesting that it might contribute to some other types of cancer, but for now, it's just lung cancer. It's not going to do anything else. Okay, I got a video for you.
Celebrating with the guys last night? The guys did invite.
Oh, you can hear it?
When it's recorded. Just stay home.
So,
eat a bunch of tacos.
All right, well, I thought you guys were going to be able to hear it, but if you watch it later, it's a really funny clip from The Office, and basically, I hope I'm not talking over it on your recording, but basically, he's talking about how his basement was ruined because he didn't get invited to go out by the guys, so he ate tacos in his basement, and taco smell is really heavy. But we hear that sometimes, that people will say, well, radon's only in the basement because it accumulates there because it's heavy, because it's a heavy atom. But that's actually not the case at all. So radon risks, it's a carcinogen. I'm going to skip a little bit because we don't have 3 hours, but it's the #1 cause of lung cancer for non-smokers. Kills 21,000 people per year in the United States. They estimate about 800 are in Georgia. and it kills more people or more Americans than lead, PCBs, dioxins, mold, and asbestos combined, all those things combined. And the reason I put that on the slide was really because that's what people worry about in real estate transactions. And sometimes they overlook radon. They want to know if they have lead-based paint or if they have asbestos ceiling tiles and things like that. But the real risk in your home is probably radon. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead here. This just talks about, we're going to go to, most people hopefully don't smoke anymore, but or quit, but these are the risks for never smokers. So I'm going to start in the middle here. At 4 picocuries, that's the action level, the EPA action level. So about 7 people out of 1,000 at that exposure will get lung cancer. That's higher than the risk of dying in a car crash. And then about 4 people per 1,000 could get lung cancer at half that, at 2 picocuries per liter. That's more than the risk of dying from poison. My wife promised me she's going to murder me with poison. She reads lots of Agatha Christie novels, so I believe her. So I might have a slightly higher risk. But you know, the EPA put all this data out, and this is old data too. It's been out for a while. They haven't seen any reason to update it, but they do recommend between 2 and 4 picocuries per liter to mitigate your home. So the EPA action level is 4. I really feel like that's the real estate transaction number. It's basically like if it's above 4, the seller's going to pay for it. If it's below 4, the seller's not going to pay for it, so the buyer might. And we do have people that are educated about radon, and they understand the risk, and they want to have it mitigated if it's between 2 and 4. So just quick about the risk. It's the EPA. It's their linear no threshold model. I think the EPA likes no threshold models. Like they have their 1 fiber theory of asbestos. Like 1 fiber of asbestos can give you lung cancer. But your risk increases linearly. There's technically no safe level, but as we'll get to, you're not going to completely eliminate it. You guys know what a half-life is, so I'll skip that. And then wanted to talk a little bit about the decay series. So I'm kind of assuming most of you are somewhat familiar with radioactive decay. But it comes from uranium, and we hear this a lot. It's we have uranium in granite and thorium in granite. But uranium has a half-life of 4.5 billion years. When it goes through this decay series, eventually it gets to radium. So radium has a half-life of 1,600 years. It's a long time. But radon is the problem. Radon is what we're measuring, and it's because radon is the first thing that's in the gas phase. So radium decays into radon. Radon has 3.8 days of a half-life to come out of the soil into your home. So it really depends more on how much radium is in the soil than anything else. And also, it's not necessarily coming from large rocks. People are always blaming granite and large rocks. If radium is inside a large boulder and it decays into radon, it's trapped. It's not going anywhere. Like a large rock does not have a lot of surface area compared to that same amount of soil. So it's really coming from the soil. You know, it's not really, you know, a granite countertop, if it's disintegrating in front of you, I would worry about it. But a granite countertop, if it is emanating for sure, but it's probably not increasing your risk dramatically because that radon is trapped inside. Only radium on the surface of the granite countertop can get out. Well, and then radon decays into polonium. Polonium is what actually causes the cancer for the most part. Radon decays into polonium. When you inhale radon, it goes through your bloodstream, you exhale it. It does decay and it releases an alpha particle, but polonium is actually will stick to dust particles. It sticks to the walls, your ductwork, your skin, but also your lungs and particles that you're inhaling. And polonium, when it decays in your lungs, that's where you're getting the dose of radiation. It's emitting an alpha particle. It goes about 1 centimeter, and it packs a big punch compared to beta and gamma radiation. Am I going too fast? Am I making sense? Am I mumbling? I do mumble a lot. Okay. I got to remind myself I don't have to get through the whole thing because you only want to hear me talk for 50 minutes. And it's really a fascinating subject. Like we could, I might just jump all the way to radon and water after we get a little bit into this, because radon and water I think is much more fun. So here we're talking about radon decay products, so polonium, bismuth, and lead. So we have radium, radon, polonium, bismuth, lead, and then that last lead isotope's relatively stable. I think the half-life was like 162 years. Sometimes realtors are like, oh my God, we have to worry about lead now too. No, not so much, because it's really the polonium decaying in your lungs is the problem. But sometimes I think I shouldn't tell them that stuff. Like maybe we should just stick to radon, but I like to confuse them. This is just comparing alpha, beta, and gamma. So it's really the alpha particles they're large. It's 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Your beta particles are electrons, and then you have gamma radiation that's emitted as well. But alpha destroys things. Alpha is what will cause a double-strand DNA break, and if your body does not kill the cell and instead replicates it, that's where the cancer comes from. So we measured in picocuries per liter in America. That is 1/1,000,000th of a curie is, or 1 picocurie is 2.2 disintegrations per minute. I don't know if anybody finds that interesting. Maybe not, but I do. And so it's not a concentration, it's the activity. It's a measure of radioactivity, the rate of energy that's released in that volume of air or water. Here's a cool video. You don't really need any audio for it, but this is a radon cloud chamber. Forget exactly how they made it, but they inject some radon gas into this chamber. This is 100 picocuries per liter is injected into the chamber, and you can see the decays as it's going through the chamber. So this is obviously a lot more than you're typically exposed to. If you look real close, you can see some of them, they decay and then they shoot off to the side. That's the polonium decaying. But this is what happens in your lungs at 100 picocuries per liter. So real quick history of radon. So miners have always been afflicted by this lung disease. They didn't really know what it was because they didn't always know what cancer was. So 1879, lung cancer was diagnosed in miners. 1900, radon was discovered. And 1950s, they made a connection between radon decay, radon in mines, and lung cancer. So not that long ago. And then radon in homes. So this is Stanley Watrous and his family and their house. This is in Pennsylvania. I forget exactly where. Okay, Montgomery County. So 1984, Stanley worked at the Limerick Nuclear Power Plant in Montgomery County, and he shows up for work and sets off the radiation monitoring devices. So I don't know if, how many of, some of you have probably been in nuclear power plants, but you know, they want to make sure you're not taking anything out, and they want to make sure you're not bringing anything in. That's what the dirty bomb is. But they measure everyone's exposure. So Stanley sets off the radiation monitoring devices, and he was covered with radioactive material. It was a brand new power plant. There was no radioactive material. So they raised an eyebrow. They went back, traced it back to his house, and measured 2,700 picocuries per liter. No, none of them got lung cancer. His house was mitigated. Doesn't mean, you know, like not everyone gets lung cancer. He wasn't real happy about being the one that they found it in his house. I think he said it ruined his life actually, but he got way too much press. But the EPA just got involved, tried to pass a lot of laws and regulations, but they did a couple surveys, found 1 in 5 homes had high levels of radon. It's a national emergency. And then, you know, at the end of the day, what happens is the states say, you're not going to tell us what to do, and the EPA says, okay, everybody has to have a public information program. In Georgia, the University of Georgia keeps the data. They're responsible for educating the public about radon gas. And and they do a great job. If you go to just Google UGA Radon or UGA Radon map, you can see how many tests have been done through the extension offices in each county in Georgia. A lot of the southern counties have had 0 tests, but and then what percentage were elevated, and then they also tell you what water tests had elevated radon and what cities and counties those were in. So
I used that data researching with it tonight, and it had, yeah, where's the money? Right here. I used the UGA data when I was writing up information about tonight, and you could see the levels for DeKalb and Fulton County combined. They tested about 33,000 houses, and at least 1 in 6 had high levels of radon above the 4 limit.
yeah. Yeah, it's so I've been watching that map evolve since 2014, really, and I don't know when they started doing it, but it's changed pretty dramatically over that period of time. Like, there are a lot of counties that didn't have any data, and I think I think it's like they want maybe 14 homes tested before they'll put them on the map. So some of them aren't on the map, but it's changed. Some of them have actually gone. Have increased, like the percentage of homes that were high, and some have decreased countywide. But just a couple levels here. The average outdoor air is 0.4 picocuries per liter, and in some parts of the country, it's as high as 4 outdoors. The EPA action level is 4. If it's 4 outside, there's probably not a whole lot you're going to be able to do about it. And then the average indoor level in the United States is 1.3. So this is just illustrating where the radon's coming from. So 85 to 95% of it's coming from the soil gas. Some of it comes in with the water if you have a well, not municipal water typically. A little bit, 1 to 4% through diffusion. In some homes it's a lot higher. And emanation in some homes it's a lot higher, so 2 to 5%, and that's emanation from building materials. Could be concrete, could be drywall, could be your countertops, but the majority of it's coming from soil gas, and it's coming from the soil around the home and under the home, and not just directly below the home. It's like 50 to 60 feet below the home and in the yard, and when it rains, water acts as a barrier around the home, so your radon level spikes when it's raining because it's not escaping into the yard. So, and then the stack effect, I don't know if we have I don't have that or not, but the stack effect, you have positive pressure at the top of the house and you have negative pressure at the bottom. So no matter what the foundation is, if you have a vented crawl space, I've been in probably at least 1,000 crawl spaces. I don't know how many, a lot of crawl spaces, but there's not a whole lot of cross ventilation in a crawl space. It's getting sucked into the house. So you have negative pressure at the lower half, you have a neutral pressure plane somewhere, and then you have positive pressure up top. So no matter what the foundation is, you have negative pressure. It could be a manufactured home, and it has the potential to have high radon. So just talked about that. Doesn't really matter. Every home should be tested. Yeah, even I've heard about people testing in high rises and it getting sucked up to the 13th floor and having high radon. But and then the radon in the soil, this is something we test all the time, and we see it every day because we want to know how hot the soil is under the house when we're mitigating it. But it ranges from 200 to 2,000 picocuries per liter, and that's what we found. And what's interesting is well, it seems around here there's always high radon in the soil. So you might have 4 picocuries per liter in the house, and you may have 30 picocuries per liter in the house. Up north they brag about how it's 300 and 400, so we don't usually see stuff that high. But when we have higher radon in the home, it's typically because it's just easier for air to move below the house. More aggregate, more gravel, less clay, less water under there, or adjacent slabs. We see a lot of suspended garages these days, and they're full of backfill, and that's a great, easy way for soil gas to get in. It collects under the garage, and then you have a crack underneath that slab between the garage slab and the top of the foundation wall that's impossible to seal, I think. I haven't found a good way to seal it. I've tried. But it's just sucking soil gas in through that crack. And whenever we see that crack, I have not found a home yet that's constructed that way where we didn't have to mitigate the soil under the garage as well.
What does mitigation involve?
All right, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. So this is an old map of the state, and it's mostly, it's the fall line here. Everything below the fall line, they have to worry about arsenic down there, and then arsenic in the water, radon in the water, and radon in the soil above. So, how much time do I have? You got a good half hour. Good half hour? Okay. All right. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about radon testing. There's lots of different ways to test. They're all very accurate. My favorite is, the liquid scintillation and activated charcoal. Those are kind of like the older ways to test. That's how they test the radon in the water, is through liquid scintillation. Although I have a radon sniffer that was developed by a Canadian company, and we can actually test the water on site, so we can demonstrate that they have radon in the water. And then the activated charcoal, so it captures the radon in the charcoal canister. They send it to the lab, and it measures gamma radiation coming off of the charcoal kit. Continuous radon monitors, these measure alpha decay inside the chamber. So air naturally diffuses into the chamber. It's a passive device, and then it just counts the decay inside the chamber. You actually throw out the first 4 hours, because the first 4 hours of air is like in your house, in your car. It's that air. They deliberately slow the diffusion down, so it's and it's filtered, so they're just measuring radon. And then these are just some typical results. You can see they're just all over the place. So we always look at the average. It's the only number that matters. It's one of the very frustrating conversation I have every day is someone calls and they want to tell me about their spikes. And they'll tell me their highest measurement, and then they'll tell me their lowest measurement. I'm like, what's the average? Like, the average is the only thing that matters. So this one, we have a spike in the middle, probably from rain. I probably had some notes in there somewhere, but if it rains, it goes up. Sometimes the HVAC system will make it go up. One thing we found with zone systems, if you have a basement that's on the same zone as the main floor, the HVAC people think it's a great idea to open the damper up a little bit, so it's always pulling a little air out of the basement. So that's great for moisture to prevent mold and to keep fresh air down there, but it creates more negative pressure, sometimes a tremendous amount of negative pressure, and radon levels go up. And we've seen, actually, I have a house, like I discovered this because I have a rental house, and when I measured, I was kind of confused why it always spiked in the middle of the day in the summertime. When the air came on, it spiked. So we always think about stack effect in the heating system causing spikes, because we do have seasonal highs from the heating system, but it was spiking from the AC, and that it was because of that damper. It was because of a zone system. And we found some homes where we go in and we're asked to provide a mitigation plan, or homes that someone else mitigated and it's not working, and we find that it's because of the HVAC system. That's a lot easier to fix then. So here's another kind of typical, probably rained at the beginning and the end, or the heat was on, or the air was on. This is one of my favorite ones. This one, this was a 5-day test, and it was a 5-day test because it was a seller during a real estate transaction, and we couldn't get back in to pick up our monitor because of her chemo. So she already had lung cancer. The realtor was refusing to believe that this was an actual real test because it went up to 90 when it rained. This is a crawl space. It was in Winder, Auburn. It was in Barrow County, and pretty low, below 4 picocuries per liter. But when it rains, it goes to 90. And she had lung cancer. The realtor cussed me out, told me she wasn't disclosing it to anyone. Did not respond very professionally, but get a couple of those. There's a lot of realtors, so odds are some of them are going to act like that. Here's another one where it goes up to 20 and back down relatively low. And these are all really short-term tests, so it's important. This is one thing that home inspectors, well, this is the problem with real estate transaction testing is you have a due diligence period. They schedule the home inspection. These days they're still doing 5 to 7 day due diligence. So a home inspector comes out, does his 48-hour test. It rains on day 2 or rains on day 1 in this case. You have really high results, but it's because of the rain, and probably the real estate transaction gets terminated, and it's unfortunate because it's probably really easy to fix. And also, if they had done a long-term test, it could have been below the action level. So long-term testing, this is preferable, and this kind of gets lost in the United States because everyone talks about real estate transactions. Consumers buy their own monitors or they send off tests to the lab, and they don't understand seasonal highs and lows all the time. But if you own a home and you do testing, you should really be doing like a 90-day test, or you could even do an annual test. And that gives you an idea of the exposure. So these action levels are based on vocational studies. So if you're exposed to 4 picocuries per liter all year or above that, that's the action level. It's not 4 picocuries per liter for an hour. That's your annual exposure. So a 90-day test or a year-long test is ideal if you're a homeowner. Downside is that if you go to sell your house and you didn't mitigate because your annual average was like, 2 or 1.5 or whatever it is, so no reason to mitigate for you, but you go to sell your home and the home inspector comes out and tests when it's raining and suddenly it's really high, then you're kind of screwed. So I really don't think real estate transactions are the time to do radon testing. My business, we really try to work with concerned homeowners. They take the time to learn about what we're doing, and they're willing to do additional testing because it can be expensive sometimes. It's not always expensive, but every house is different. But these are my favorite monitors. This is an Alpha Track monitor. People don't really use them anymore because you can just buy your own monitor. But these air just diffuses in, and there's a piece of plastic inside it, and when you send it to the lab, they count all the damage done to the plastic. So the alpha decay inside this little device damages the plastic, and they can figure out what the radon level is based on the number of little marks in the plastic. So here's a consumer model. Okay, we'll talk about mitigation. So the biggest myth, I think, with mitigation is that you just need to seal the cracks in the basement. Sealing the cracks is part of the mitigation, but it's really not so much to keep the radon out, but to make sure we're not sucking air back in. A lot of times the radon is high. Well, a lot of times home inspectors, they don't think about where they put the monitor. If there's a plumbing penetration through the slab, and you got a hole in the floor, there's radon and thoron coming out of that hole. So that's not a great place to do your test, but some of them do that. But we basically, I'm just gonna go off. I'm tired of looking at the slides. So there's basically three ways to deal with pollution, and if you think about radon as pollution, compare it to water. Like if you have polluted water, step 1 is stop polluting the water. So that's the same strategy with radon mitigation. Is we try to collect the soil gas before it comes into the home and vent it above the home. That's what a mitigation system does. It's a sub-slab or a submembrane depressurization system. So depressurize the soil so it doesn't get into the house, just like with pollution in water. The second strategy is with water is you filter the water. So if you have polluted water, you can usually filter the contaminants out. You can do that with radon decay products. However, it doesn't change your radon level. But if you really want to reduce your risk of cancer, there are filtration systems that are not crazy expensive that will reduce your risk of cancer. You're still going to have high radon though, so it's not a great solution for most homeowners, and it's not something that's going to help when you go to sell your home and some home inspector does a 2-day test and it's elevated. And then the third strategy is dilution. So probably heard dilution is the solution to pollution. Hate saying that, but I did. But you know, if you have polluted water, you can dilute it and make it safer. Just like if you have a lot of radon in your home, you can dilute that air using an ERV or an HRV in some places. But in the South, we'd use an ERV to bring in fresh air and dilute that air. But the primary method, because diluting it is kind of pretty expensive, but this is the easiest way to do it is a subslab depressurization. So this is what it looks like on the outside of the house. This is what ours do anyway. We put a cover on it because nobody wants to look at it. Let's skip through this stuff. Well, there are some standards, like the exhaust is going to be very radioactive. So you got 2,000 picocuries per liter in the soil, or 200, whatever. The exhaust is going to be very radioactive. So you don't want to. There's clearance requirements from grade. If you're gonna, it's supposed to vent above the roof, but if it's you can go 20 feet off the ground, and then angle it away from the house if it's a really large building. But then you have clearance requirements from your neighbor's house. You don't want to blow it at construction materials because it's got a lot of water vapor in it. I saw a system the other day that was vented under a soffit, and there was just like nothing but mold going up the soffit because all the water vapor condensing on it. And then, just like the fuel gas requirements, they need to be vented above windows, like 2 feet above a window that's within 10 feet. Same kind of rules for radon. So. And then the fan has to be located outside the building envelope, so it could be in the garage, it could be in the attic, but it has to be above living space. So it could be in a garage if there's no bonus room. It could be in the attic above the living space, but typically it's outside because that's just the easiest place to put it. And then it has an indicator on it that shows it's working, and the newer systems are supposed to have alarms on them too. So after it's installed, you wait 24 hours. Like the radon really starts to drop down immediately because the soil gas is not coming in at the same rate, and it will find a new kind of equilibrium with the home, but it starts to reduce right away. So this is a system that's installed improperly. It's got a cap on it, so they didn't want rainwater going in. It would take a tsunami, or probably a couple tsunamis, to fill up a suction pit from rainfall. So it's not a lot of water going down the pipe. Most of the water in the pipe is from condensation in the wintertime. But this is an obstruction, so it's really reducing airflow and reducing the effectiveness of the system, and it's unnecessary. Here's another system. Somebody cut up an exterior extension cord to use for wiring. And here's one that's vented right below this window. So there's a bedroom window up here. So most people don't open their windows anymore, but it's. I've
got a question.
Yep.
Wait, microphone.
Hi. In a house like this one, can you just vent it off at a low level because it's so high up to the windows? Can you vent it off down low?
Well,
And wouldn't radon sink anyway?
no, the radon does not. It does not sink. No, well, I don't know what was going on inside here. Actually, I do, because this is the same one with the extension cord. So I remember this house. I don't know why they chose to vent it out right here. Like probably they should have vented out farther away so they didn't have to worry about the window. But the standards just say it has to be 10 feet above grade. Sometimes the roof line is really low, so they have that 10 feet. And it says it has to be above the eave if it's less than 20 feet. So this is actually less than 20 feet, so it's got to be 6 inches above the eave. But it's supposed to be 4 feet over a window within 10 feet. So it's just a terrible location. I think they cored the hole through the wall and just ran with it. They should have planned it better to begin with. But as far as radon sinking, it doesn't sink. Like when it comes into the house, it's decaying. You know, it's constantly decaying, and it's moving up through the house. And on your whatever you're measuring in your basement, it's usually about 50% on the next floor, 40 to 60, and then 40 to 60 on the third floor above that. So it's not sinking in the house. It's decaying as it moves up through the house. And actually, when you open a window, you know, it's kind of like a hole in a balloon. Like the radon spreads out pretty. It's inert and it's not reacting with anything. Yes, it's a heavy atom, but most of the molecules around it are way heavier. But these small particles aren't really affected by gravity, so we can't think about gravity on an atom.
Gas,
Yeah.
so it doesn't form molecules.
Correct. Yeah.
So its atomic weight would take up about the same amount of space as a molecule,
Yeah.
and so it's close enough that it doesn't sink. It just a little bit of breeze stirs it up.
Yeah, well, it spreads out pretty evenly through the living space. When you open a window, the radon levels drop immediately, and it's getting pushed out the window, you know, and it's going up through the living space. And when it goes outside, it goes into the atmosphere. Like it just spreads out. Here's one where we got two fans jammed into an attic space. I think the first one didn't work, so they thought they'd add another one, and it went sideways to get it out. Here's one where the pipe just fell off because it wasn't secured properly. If anybody cares about the cost, it's typically like $1,800, maybe $2,500. This slide I made a long time ago. Prices have gone up a little bit, but about $550 to replace the fan. The fans, if you install the right fan, it should last 10 to 15 years. Could last 30 years. They're designed to last for a long time. Sometimes people call and they say, we need our fan replaced. You know, it's been on there for 5 years. And first thing I think is that it's the wrong fan, because it should have lasted at least 10, you know. So these are just pictures of mitigation systems in a slab. So this is probably a basement actually, but it goes up, fan in the attic. This one goes out the side wall with the fan outside. Here's a crawl space. So a crawl space, the standards say you have to put down a membrane and suck the soil gas from below the membrane, but there's actually a newer method where you, well, it's kind of like a basket that you bury in the soil. You know, dig like a 3-foot pit in the crawl space, bury this basket, run the pipe out of it. It's called a radon well. It's a very, very new product. I'll let you know if it works. We just installed one today. We're going to see. The crawl space, this guy had his crawl space encapsulated. It was a 3,000 square foot crawl space, and it was done wrong. So, you know, we went out there and said, hey, you know, in order for us to do a submembrane depressurization, all this stuff needs to be sealed up, needs to be sealed to the walls. It was basically just 12 mil barrier laid on the floor with lots of openings. You know, they had it cut out around the HVAC system. So it would have been very expensive to fix the membrane to do this type of system. So we're trying the radon well, but we basically create this plenum in the soil and compact the soil on top of it. After we connected the fan, we had I say we, I wasn't there, my employees did it. But they smoke tested it to make sure they weren't sucking air in from the crawl space. So the soil gas is coming from down below. And this is, the reason I believe this will work is because when we do our mitigations, we do, it's called pressure field extension testing, and you drill a hole in the floor here and you create suction, and then you drill some small holes and use a micromanometer to see if you have negative pressure on the other side of the slab. So we use that to inform us of whether or not we need to dig a big suction pit. So like one of our mantras is big pits solve problems. Like the radon's coming from 50 to 60 feet below the house and around the house, right? So it doesn't really matter if I'm pulling air underneath the slab. I need to collect that soil gas like deep below the house. So you dig into a deeper soil layer, dig a wider pit that has a lot more surface area, And even if you don't get communication on the other side of the slab, that almost always works, unless, there are other things that can make it not work, but big pits solve problems. So why I think this system will work in a crawl space is because it's the same thing as not having communication. We buried it deep enough that the soil gas we're collecting is not from the crawl space. It's coming from the earth. So I hope it works. But I told the guy it might not work. And he was happy to try it out because he didn't want to try to figure out how to fix that encapsulation job. I don't know why these pictures are here. They're just kind of sloppy, weird fans. And then the system has a manometer on it. This just shows static pressure. It doesn't really mean anything unless you know what the fan is designed to do. So a lot of realtors think this is the radon level. They say, well, it's below 4, so it must be okay, right? So I'm going to skip all this stuff. We're supposed to talk about schools too. It's all the same. It's the same in schools. Testing is a little different in schools. So so you can install passive systems. They usually don't work because they don't get installed properly, or the plumber doesn't care. It just gets destroyed. So sometimes on new construction, if you have a great permeable material underneath it, sometimes you just got to let them frame everything out and then make a suction pit where you want to run your pipe. All right. Does anyone have any questions before we talk about radon and water? I usually encourage people to interrupt me a lot, but so I don't have to talk.
You showed the crawl space. What would happen if you took a crawl space and put 2 vents at different sides of the house and just put a fan on one of the vents to either push or pull air through the vents?
Well, you'd freeze your pipes and have a mold problem, possibly, but that's the concern is really, we're in a mixed humid climate. It certainly wouldn't work farther south, and right here is kind of borderline. But you just don't, well, there used to be a product, and I wish this still existed. I tried to track down the guy who invented it, because he was from Georgia. He was just too early. Like, I think it would be a hit now. But he had this crawl space mold problem, and it was basically, or mold solution. And it was basically, you seal up all the vents, and you have a fan out on one side, and then you just have naturally drafting air coming in on the other side, and it hits sort of like a coil that's at the same temperature as the crawl space, and it causes condensation on this coil, and then it runs back out. I think it was a great idea. I think that would be a good solution for venting a crawl space. But really, mold is the problem. Like you can create a mold problem by just sucking in humid air. So and then a freeze danger in the wintertime. But we've had some where we put ERVs in crawl spaces, because if it's a 5,000 square foot crawl space and it's $3 to $5 per square foot to encapsulate that crawl space, it's cheaper to do an ERV in a dehumidifier.
ERV?
It's an energy recovery ventilator. So it's so you have, and this is the same thing if you want to ventilate the house. And sometimes when you have emanation problems, like that's really the only solution is an ERV. But the energy recovery part is it's going through a heat exchanger. So in the summertime, you have warm, wet air coming in from outside, and then you have air getting blown out, and it goes through a heat exchanger, and it transfers some of that moisture to the outgoing air and some of that thermal energy to the outgoing air. And then same thing in the wintertime, you have heated air inside. You don't want to blow your heated, conditioned air outside, so it goes through that same heat exchanger and it transfers some of that thermal energy to the incoming air. So they say they're like 90 to 95% efficient. I don't really believe that, but just because it doesn't feel like it is, honestly. In the wintertime, it feels like you're blowing cold air in somebody's basement, but we've put a lot of them in there and they work. The downside is that eventually, that extra 10% of of water vapor that's not removed is going to start to accumulate. And if you don't have if it's not a conditioned space, most basements, the AC is not running all the time, or it's very rarely running. So you have to have a dehumidifier as well. So that's a $6,000 solution. But sometimes in an enormous crawl space, or if you have an emanation problem in a basement and a depressurization system is not going to work, maybe that's the only way to fix the problem.
What do you do in places like Florida where the house is just right on a concrete slab?
Well, everyone in Florida thinks they don't have radon, so they don't do a whole lot. But I know someone with a mitigation company down there, and they have unique problems because of the soil, but they do have areas where they have really high radon in Florida. But I haven't had to personally deal with any of those, so I can't speak to it, but they find a way, yeah. Any other questions? Does anybody, how much time until I shut up?
A comment.
Okay.
My basement is hot,
Yeah.
borderline. When I had the furnace replaced, I made sure that the furnace intake was from outside air.
Yeah. Yeah, well, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
Well, I didn't want to use basement air to
Yeah.
heat the rest of the living quarters.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't really. I mean, all the furnace manufacturers recommend using outside air. The system will last longer and it'll be more efficient. And then, like that home that I looked at the other day where it was just venting into the base or into the crawl space, it's just accumulating carbon dioxide down there. Eventually it's going to run out of oxygen, and then it's going to start accumulating carbon monoxide, you know. But as far as, so do you think that that's helping your radon problem by bringing fresh air in?
Well, I'm pretty sure the stuff in the basement isn't getting upstairs as much.
Yeah. Well, any air that comes in is replaced by something, so it's I don't know. It could be helping, but that is a thing. Like anytime air goes out of the house, air comes in the house from somewhere. So you turn on your bath fan, that air is coming in somewhere. You know, it could be your basement, it could be your crawl space. A lot of the newer kitchen vent fans are so powerful. They have a switch where fresh air comes in when that fan comes on, just so they can control it, so they know where it's coming from. But yeah, anytime air is leaving, it's coming in, and also anytime air is going in, some's getting pushed out too. That's another strategy with the ERV, is to kind of pressurize the basement, is that you pull in more than you're taking out, so you can sort of push back